Great. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Zoe Dean Smith, and I'm Vice President of Economic Empowerment and Entrepreneurship at Vital Voices. You've just heard from our fabulous President and CEO, Elise Nelson. And I'm very thrilled to have Paul and Ralien here in the session with us today talking about mentorship. So a very, very quick introduction of both. Paul is Vice Chair of the UN Global Compact and co-founder and chair of Imagine, a new organization which mobilizes business leaders around tackling climate change and global inequality. So Paul, even though this is the first time I'm meeting you, I love you already for the work that you're doing. Thank you. Okay. Ralien is Senior Country Engagement Specialist of NDC Partnership Support Unit. She's been advocating for ambitious climate action and sustainable development from 2009, starting at the national and local levels in the Netherlands. Now, I believe that the two of you know each other already. So, Ralien, can you tell us a little bit about how you know each other?
Yes, of course. So I used to be the Dutch youth representative to the UN for Sustainable Development. And I think Paul and I maybe first met each other at the World Water Day that was hosted in the Netherlands. And I think I had just boldly reached out and said, hey, Mr. Paul Polman, would you like to meet with some international youth to speak about the climate challenge and about involving young people? And I think on the day itself, I got a text of his colleague, all right, Paul can meet you guys now. Let's meet there at this time. So I think that was the first time we got to meet, and also immediately showed how he is a champion of young people and just very open and approachable to connecting with new young people on this challenge. So that was really great, and we stayed in touch since and see each other at conferences before COVID, at least.
Great, thank you, thank you. And I'm sure you must meet at many conferences together as you're working in such similar fields. So Ralien, can you share, to kick us off into the conversation about mentorship, what is one key lesson that you've learned from a mentor or from mentorship?
Yes, of course. Actually, I see mentorship as partnership, because I think it's not a one-way direction. What I always felt in my connection and collaboration with Paul was we're in this challenge together. So if you can thrive, that is good for all of us, because it's good for these challenges. Climate change, the SDGs, they're all intergenerational challenges, and that's why we also need intergenerational partnerships. So I never saw it as like someone is above you or someone is more important than you, and I also never got that feeling. I got the feeling that you're an equal player in this fight, and I want us to do this together, because this is a fight of all the generations. So partnership to me is central to mentorship.
And I love hearing that about the intergenerational idea. A couple of years ago, there was the phrase which was reverse mentoring, where you found sort of older people asking younger people to mentor them. And I love that idea. And in fact, we find that in a lot of our mentoring programs is that the mentors come out of the conversation or the experience feeling like they've probably learned more from their mentee than they thought that they ever would. And moving to you, Paul, same question to you. What's one key lesson that you've learned from a mentee in your life?
Well, I agree with Ralien, and it's good to see her here with her passion and enthusiasm. I don't know who's the mentor or the mentee in this relationship, but I was tremendously energized when I met her, and enormous passion she has, as you can see, especially about the areas that I care about, which is the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, which I helped develop at that time as part of the panel, and then obviously climate change being one of the most burning issues. And she was fairly young in the Netherlands still in those days, but had great ambitions. And one of the ambitions was to go to the US, if I remember, study at Yale at the university. And then we've been continuously in touch. I am an avid follower of her Twitter feeds and all the passions that she shows there. Her work with, obviously she did as a change maker in the Netherlands, but then also with the NDC partnership in Washington, or the WRI, and all the other things. She's hard to keep up with because she has more energy than anybody else in the world. But what I get out of it is hope, to be honest, and a lot of ideas. It is very, very important that we stay connected. I don't want to play the generation thing, but it is absolutely important to get fresh perspectives, to get the passion of the young people that C has and what is on their mind, but more importantly, their creative solutions and their can-do attitude. In some sense, tenacity. It makes us even more committed to fight for the cause, if I may say it that way.
Thank you. Paul, that actually builds very nicely into our next question for Ralien, which is, in a virtual world, how can we ensure that we're building meaningful and empowering relationships?
I think there's actually a lot of opportunities in this virtual world. It's actually easier than ever to connect all around. So even before COVID, it was often that Paul and I connected through emails or text. So I think you don't need to be in person to be a mentor or to be mentored or to be connected. So I personally think that the world is open. You can just pick up the phone and call somebody and you can just shoot a message. So it's even easier now because we're all thinking that the virtual world is sort of our playing ground and connections are even closer than they were before. So we should leverage that.
Thank you. Paul, shifting gears a little bit, in a lot of conversations about mentorship, there's a conversation about mentorship and sponsorship. Can you talk about the difference between the two?
Well, there's a huge difference. And the question is, should a mentor also be a sponsor, or would that be a little bit of a conflict of interest, so to speak? But a mentor is, I think, is a more of a trusted role in the sense of advising you, sharing the experience, having discussions about career and career visions and opportunities like we have had. It's, helping expand the network, opening doors where now and then a door needs to be opened, like we do with the UN or other things. So it's a friend, and it's making use of your experience and putting that to the service of others. Would be very much a mentee mentor relationship, if you want to. Sponsoring is slightly different and is equally needed. I'm not sure that you can do that in the same person, but a sponsor is really someone who fights for you within your organization or your company. One of the bigger issues, as we all know, is not necessarily the hiring of women in companies, but moving them to senior positions. It always, when the decision has to be made, the gray suits decide it needs to be another man. I mean, that's what the statistics point out. So you need a sponsor who fights for you in that sense, a sponsor who advocates and becomes actually the one that ensures that you're being championed at the times that is needed. So I think slightly different roles, but both very useful. And you cannot do one versus the other. A sponsor would be equally important to me as a mentor would be.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that clarity. In a lot of conversations that we've had about mentorship and sponsorship in the past, people think that sponsorship is a financial commitment that they're making. So it's great to have that clarity. And we see it a lot in the multinational corporations. You see that culture of sponsorship, which is wonderful, just as you pointed out, especially important for women who are trying to climb their career ladders. So moving from there, Ralien, a question for you. Do you think it's important for men to mentor women and vice versa? What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And I actually think you need both. And in my own case, I actually have a wide array of people around me that I consider my mentors. And I think it's really important as a young woman to have women also around you as mentors, because they have faced certain barriers, certain ceilings, and they can share with you their experiences and explain how they have tackled that, and that you can actually learn and build on their work. So that's really important. But on the other hand, I think it's important that men also mentor women, because one, they can find out what kind of challenges women actually face, so that they maybe also expand their understanding of the barriers that still exist and that young women may face in the system. Second, I also think that we need to avoid continuing the old boys network. So if we're not careful, there will be a young boys network, and there's this helping out, like Paul was just saying, the men will just pick the men because they will pick whatever looks like them and what they feel comfortable with. And there's also a lot of unconscious biases. So I think it's really important, if we want to create equal opportunities and give equal access to women, but also people of color and other like systematically marginalized groups, that you have a wide array of mentors. And I think we cannot fight these fights without women. And I think the whole world will be better off if women can be in more leadership positions. So I really encourage men to also mentor women, understand their challenges, but also and then speak up about those challenges. For example, the gender pay gap, harassment, like those are things like he for she. Men should also speak up about them, because in the end, it's also a men's issue. So that's why it's really important to have it both ways.
Thank you. Those are great points. And in fact, to that, I would even build on that and say it's important to start mentorship programs or initiate them with young kids, with boys and girls, rather than just at the sort of adult level. Paul, I have a question for you. You know, many people are under pressure to make a commitment to take on mentees, and they've got very packed calendars. So how do you ensure that you can stay accountable when you make that mentoring commitment?
Well, it starts with your own stronger purpose. What are you committed to? And it is very clear to me that we need more leadership in this world and more trees, if I may say, coming back to climate change. But if we don't invest in the future of leaders, who is going to take over from us? 50% of the world population is below 30 years old. They're going to be 100% tomorrow. It is absolutely important that we not only prepare them, but that we make space for them. And that requires a commitment. That is why I chair the Side Business School. I'm part of the Howe Institute, work with other universities, work on programs like the Vanguards in the UN, advocate that tremendously. And especially women, I want to come back to that, is the disadvantaged group. I mean, if we like it or not, it's a terrible statistic. If you look at anything, even today, on the trajectory to gender equality, 257 years. In fact, the clock has been set back with COVID. Women 1.8 times more vulnerable to job losses than men, 14 times more likely to die and from disasters and other things. And yet we know that it is economically better, it's morally justified, it's a financial strong argument. But, you know, only 17% of women in boards, probably 4% women CEOs, if I may be generous, board chairs, probably on the same low statistics. We cannot run the world anymore like that. And anytime we bring women up in management, which in Unilever, I had a 50-50 board and a balanced management in the company by the time I left, we see it is to the benefit of everybody. It is to the benefit of the individuals that can develop to their full potential. It's in the benefit of the companies. They are more sustainable, by the way. It's a direct correlation between that and gender, and they're also more profitable. So you'd be daft not to spend that time on that and investing in the future. And I would argue, indeed, if you have the choice to be a mentor to someone, you have to prioritize women, if you like it or not. We've, for generations, for decades, for centuries, prioritized men without any excuse. Now we need to correct these numbers, and short of having quotas or other methods to do that, at least we have to invest in the upcoming talents to be sure that we correct what probably more and more people see now, slowly may I add, this gross injustice or inequity that is built in society. That's the foundation of the Sustainable Development Goals. That's why we put gender equality as goal number 5 so prominently in the goals themselves.
Thank you, Paul. That is a great way to wrap up this conversation. It's really, really powerful message. So I'm hoping that everybody that's joined us is in agreement. I'd like to thank you both very much for this session. And please, to the audience, stay on with us for our next session.